Hey, Robby. So, since you got a past in the film industry and are now buying up more homes than anyone in Canada, good man, where do you recommend actors invest their money to diversify and set themselves up for the future?
What's going on again, man? Listen, I'm going to start with the basic fundamentals. One of the things that got me into trouble when I was younger is I made a lot of money, but I was spending it all on liabilities. So instead of putting anything into stocks or real estate or cryptos, which didn't exist at the time, I was spending it at the club. I was spending it on bottles, jewelry, clothing, and I think that's a huge problem with a lot of people who aren't able to accumulate assets over time, is they wind up spending it on clothing, on what they're wearing and things like that are not going to appreciate over time. So a basic philosophy and a basic step that I have for anybody: match your liability expenses with your asset purchases. So if you're going to spend like, $5,000 at the club or something, make sure that you put that away as well too into one of those baskets that I'm about to talk about. Same thing if you're going out and you're spending $100 at the bar on a weekend. You should be buying at least $100 worth of stock or putting that somewhere where you know that you're getting that for a lifetime value, or you're going to be able to accumulate more with that. So let's get into one of the 4 topics. The first one I'm going to start with is real estate. Real estate obviously is the mecca. That's where I focused a lot of my energy in, but that's what allows you to purchase other assets as well too. It's very important when you're a high income earner that you replace your income with something. You're going to need cash flow. And now, you're an actor, so fortunately you might be acting the rest of your life. You may never retire. But for a lot of athletes, there's a small window where they're going to make a large income, and then they got to replace that. So if you're an entertainer, you might have a team, and your team might cost you, say, $500,000 a year. Well, when you stop making 7 figures a year, you need to do something to be able to replace that. Because even if you have 10, 15, 20 million in the bank, that's not going to last you that long if you're spending $500,000, $1 million a year. So real estate is a great way if you're buying high cap rate properties in order to replace that income over time. And it's good to get started early, because you're not just going to go out and buy, $10+ million of real estate. I started with a $100,000 home, right? And the reality is this is a game that you're going to want to learn and get better at over time. Anything that you put energy into, you're going to get better. I don't care if it's entertainment, I don't care if it's business, I don't care if it's sports, you're going to get better. You put time in at the gym, you're going to get stronger, right? That's just how it works. So real estate is a very important component to that, because A, it's going to help you pay down equity, B, it's going to help you cash flow, and you can also transition that into other assets. So now I'll get into my second one, which is stocks. Now listen, out of these baskets, I actually own the least amount of stocks than anything, but it is a traditional investment vehicle that's done well for decades and decades, hundreds of years really, and it's something that banks and institutions love to see on your balance sheet. So it is important to have that there as well too. The type of stocks I focus on right now is clean energy stocks, because that's where a lot of the capital from oil is being transitioned to. I also like commodity metals, because commodity metals are what's going to be huge in the future. Right now we have a shortage. Commodity metals like nickel, copper, silver, these are all in high demand for renewables, right? And then of course you can choose some things you like. Look, I like Endeavor, for instance. I'm not recommending that stock, but the UFC is owned by Endeavor, so it's a stock that I really like. And really focus a portion of your investment in stocks and dividends as well too, because dividends, if you repurchase shares over time, it's really going to help you accumulate more shares and more wealth. Again, if you're in the network game, if you're trying to grow your assets, you're in the accumulation game. You always got to remember that. You're not looking to trade quickly and sell. I don't trade penny stocks, I don't trade cryptocurrencies, and I don't even like to sell homes. You're trying to accumulate as much as you can over time and then use that to buy more as well too. Now let's get into the third one, which is cryptocurrencies. Now this one obviously is the risky one for a lot of old school investors. Your value is going to go up, down, sideways, and everything in between. And we're not sure where government regulation is going to land on this. So, this is definitely a higher risk investment, but it's something that you're going to want to have exposure to. Me personally, I feel like it's going to be used, and once the regulation globally comes into effect, I think it's going to take off once again. It's clearly not going anywhere. And really, when you have $1 trillion asset and above, it's not in the government's interest to destroy these. So you might get a lot of news out there being like, oh, it's going to zero, it's going up here. But you get that in every company, you get that in every single stock. This is just normal news that gets put out. There's always going to be 2 sides to every story. There's always the Democrats, there's always the Republicans, and then there's a Green Party there as well too, right? So you got to take that into an account. If you believe in cryptocurrencies or think it'll do well, or even if you don't, I would suggest putting a small portion in there, because at least that way you know you're not going to miss out. If it goes down, you're not going to feel bad, but if it skyrockets, you're going to be like, hey, I didn't miss the boat, right? Now, for the 4th category I'll go into, I'm going to give it over to a licensed professional. I do know a bit about it, but I think it's a lot easier to hand over to my boy Justin, and he'll tell you what to do.
Ed, what's going on? This is a complicated product that is going to take a little more time than what I've got in this video to explain, so I'm going to try and simplify it for you. Let's compare a whole life 20-pay policy to a real estate purchase. You're going to buy the house, $250,000 in life insurance. You're going to have a fixed 20-year payment, just like a 20-year mortgage, $250 a month. You're going to pay that policy for 20 years. At the end of the 20 years, it's paid off. You now own the house, you own the policy, so you become a shareholder of that insurance company. As that death benefit increases based on those dividends, there's going to be cash value that accumulates inside that product. You can borrow that equity out, borrow against it, or withdraw it at any point in time throughout the policy. Down the road, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, that policy is going to be worth 10 times what it is that you paid for it, and you'll be able to leverage that capital throughout the entire life of the policy. So that's it, Whole Life 20 Pay 101. Hopefully you found some value and insight in this. If you have any other questions, call me anytime.
All right, guys, I hope that helped out. Justin is the man, and he helps me out with life insurance policies as well, too. And look, you know, a basic concept to remember about this is like everything that you get into is the education game. You might like stocks a little more than real estate. Well, then focus some energy on there. But the biggest thing that I recommend to everybody is, make sure that you're not in it for the short term. You're in it for the long term. You're going to want to match your liabilities with your asset purchases if you're doing nothing. A lot of people are already past that stage. Maybe they just save money. And if you just save money, you're going to want to put it into these baskets as well, too. Because the issue is, if you just save money, you're going to be losing out to inflation, particularly with governments printing a record amount of money and increasing our money supply. So I hope this helps you learn a little bit and really, for the people who are just getting started or maybe their entire net worth is on their body right now, transitioning some of that into things that are actually going to provide value. Because listen, if you got enough cash flow, you can buy all the Gucci and everything else that you want, right? It's not going to be an issue, but you got to get those first. So take away from that, need to just have all these showy, flashy things or have these big parties or spend a ton at the bar and start putting it in other areas. Because listen, at the end of the day, you need your assets to pay for your liabilities. That's the key to success, whether you're an entertainer, whether you want $50,000 a year or you want $50 million a year. Once your assets pay for your liabilities, you won. Let's go.